Have you ever met someone who always seems calm, wise, and 10 steps ahead, but never brags, never rushes, never needs to prove it? They don't just know things, they see clearly, and more importantly, they move differently. While most people chase applause or get distracted by noise, these rare individuals build strength in silence and let their mind guide their fate. In this video, we'll explore what makes someone truly intelligent, not by how much they know, but by how deeply they understand. Stay with me. What you're about to learn might just change the way you think forever. 1. True intelligence is depth of vision. Most people mistake intelligence for quick thinking or solving puzzles, like being able to recall information or analyze numbers with speed. But that's only a fragment of what it truly means to be wise. The Stoics never praised a man merely for his memory or cleverness. They looked deeper. Seneca said, "A mind is not tested by its answers, but by its questions." You can have all the sharpness in the world, but without a guiding principle, without a broader understanding of life's design, you'll still stumble in darkness. Let me put it simply. You can have the brightest torch in the valley, but if you never leave the valley, you'll never see the mountain. Intelligence is not only the strength of your mental light, it is the height from which you shine it. Imagine two men. One is standing at the base of the mountain, the other is at the peak. The man below can describe the rocks in great detail, but the one above can see the entire terrain, rivers, forests, and paths no one else even knows exist. This is what we call perspective. Many people who are praised for being smart often remain trapped in a narrow view. They can solve technical problems, yet still remain angry, unhealthy, or empty inside. They wrestle with the world, resentful of its mess, unable to find peace. Intelligence in the Stoic sense is not about mastering information, it's about mastering the self. The man with the highest recorded IQ once said that many intelligent people have magnification but lack aperture. In other words, they can zoom in, but they can't see wide. They can calculate, but can't contemplate. They can dissect the parts, but fail to understand the whole. They know facts, but not how to live. And this is where many brilliant minds fall short. They may sound articulate, quote philosophy, or dazzle you in debate, but their lives are scattered, their thoughts are restless, and when left alone, they cannot sit quietly with themselves. Marcus Aurelius asked, "Why do you not make yourself worthy of all that nature has given you? A sharp mind without inner harmony is like a sword without a wielder." Now you may ask, how do I develop this broader form of intelligence? The answer is not a trick or a hack. It's a practice, a long, demanding, beautiful practice. You must study, not to impress, but to understand. Reflect, not just to criticize, but to see clearly. And above all, act, not in haste, but in alignment with what you know to be right. The Stoic path is not academic, it is lived. Epictetus reminds us, don't explain your philosophy, embody it. So if you seek a mind like Marcus Aurelius or a tongue as sharp as a blade, it won't come from watching one video or reading one book. It comes from living each day with discipline and depth. You must observe the world, not to judge it, but to see through it. You must ask yourself, what am I truly chasing? Is it knowledge or is it wisdom? The world praises the fast talker, but the wise man is slow to speak and quick to understand. Each stage of inner development is like a higher path on the mountain, and no one at the lower trail can understand what the summit looks like. You must climb with humility. You won't leap from bottom to top. You will rise with effort, with intention, with solitude, with stillness. And so, if you are still here listening, it means you are willing. You are not seeking a shortcut. You are ready to walk the longer road. Good. Because this is not a path of tricks and secrets, it is a path of endurance, clarity, and transformation. The journey begins by letting go of the illusion that being smart is enough. Intelligence is not a weapon to use against others. It is a mirror to reflect upon yourself. And when that mirror becomes clear, so does the path. Let's continue, because what comes next is the architecture of a wiser life. 2. Wisdom is in the course correction. We've all heard the saying, doing the same thing over and over while expecting different results is a sign of madness. Whether or not Einstein actually said it doesn't matter. The deeper truth behind it is what matters. And it aligns with something the Stoics understood well. You must not just act, but reflect. You must not just move, but correct. There's a principle the ancients understood, even if they didn't give it a name. The Greeks called it Kubernetes, the one who steers. In the modern world, we call it cybernetics, but what it really means is this. Intelligence is not how fast you think, how much you know, or how clever you sound. It is your ability to steer your life with awareness toward what matters. It is your ability to adjust. Imagine you are a captain sailing through fog. You cannot control the wind, you cannot control the sea, but you can steer. You can feel the pull of the current, the resistance of the tide, and the drift of your own thinking. Most people set a goal and never look again. They get blown off course, they hit rocks, and instead of correcting, they quit. Or worse, they keep going in the wrong direction with pride, hoping the storm will change for them. The Stoics would say, this is foolishness. To continue in error out of stubbornness is not strength. It is weakness dressed up as pride. Marcus Aurelius wrote, if you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it, and this you have the power to revoke at any moment. In other words, the wise are not perfect navigators, but they are honest ones. They sense when they are off course and they adjust. Let's ground this in something simple. Picture a ship aiming for a lighthouse. The waters are rough and winds push it off its path. A foolish sailor complains about the weather. A wise sailor watches his instruments, reads the sky, and turns the wheel. Intelligence is in the correction. The same applies to life. You start with a goal, maybe peace of mind, mastery of your craft, or a better way of living. You take action. Then life pushes back. You fail. You get distracted. You make a mistake. What do you do next? If you are awake, you observe where you are, compare it with where you want to be, and make a new decision. This is how intelligence lives. Not in the grand plan, but in the moment of awareness. I've drifted, and now I return. Seneca said, no man can live a happy life if he turns everything to his own purposes. Live according to nature. That means you must flow with reality, not fight it, and you must learn to adjust your path when you see yourself straying from it. Now, let's bring this into the structure of your life. Your mind is the ship, your reasoning is the rudder, and your awareness is the compass. Most people let the wind carry them. They drift from distraction to distraction. They tell themselves they're going somewhere, but they never stop to ask, am I still heading toward my purpose? It's not because they lack intelligence, it's because they do not apply it. True wisdom is iterative. It grows through feedback. A wise man doesn't curse his failures. He uses them. Like a thermostat that adjusts to temperature or a farmer who reads the weather, the intelligent person observes reality, adjusts his inner state, and continues forward. Epictetus taught, it's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. The modern world offers 1,000 ways to get distracted. To be intelligent now is not about absorbing more, it's about steering better. So you must ask yourself, Have I truly chosen my destination? And more importantly, am I still steering toward it? Have I noticed when I was off track? Have I corrected? Because in the end, the wise do not reach their goals by moving in straight lines. They reach them by moving honestly, through course correction, through humility, through constant refinement of thought and action. And that brings us to the next insight, where we'll explore what it means to not just think clearly, but to see widely. 3. Your goal shapes your soul. What does steering your life have to do with getting what you want? The answer is simple. Everything. You cannot live well without aiming well, and you cannot aim well if you don't know what you're aiming at. In the Stoic view, a wise person doesn't merely act. They act with direction. Intelligence, then, is not about how much you know or how clever you sound. It's about your ability to act, observe, adjust, and continue moving with intention. That's what separates wisdom from mere activity. Let's bring this down to earth. Imagine a writer who dreams of sharing truth with the world, but gives up after a few months because no one reads their work. They think the path is blocked. But the truth is, they never really explored new ways, never adapted, never looked deeper into what their audience needs or how to refine their message. They saw the obstacle and gave up. The Stoics would say they mistook discomfort for impossibility. They did not fail because the goal was unreachable. They failed because they did not learn from the first failed attempt. They didn't steer. Epictetus reminded us that circumstances don't rise to meet you. You rise to meet circumstances. That means when your first action doesn't get you to the goal, you do not quit. You reflect. You correct. You try again. The man of low awareness meets resistance and interprets it as rejection, but the wise interpret it as redirection. You do not need to know the entire path. You only need to take the next true step, and then another. But that's the thing. Many people never take the first real step. They talk, they plan, they even fantasize about the goal, but they never commit to movement. Or if they do, they walk blindly and ignore the signs that they're drifting. That's not intelligence. That's stubbornness in disguise. It's like setting a course, sailing into a storm, and refusing to adjust the sails. And here's a truth that most won't say out loud. Sometimes you reach for a goal, and halfway there, you realize you were chasing the wrong thing. That's not failure. That's wisdom. Pivot. Change direction. You are not a prisoner of the past. The Stoics held that your reason is your compass. If the path leads to ruin, change the path. What matters is that you continue toward something that brings order and meaning to your life. So let's speak plainly. If you want to become more intelligent, not just in thought, but in being, you must begin with a goal. Not a shallow ambition, a true one, a purpose that aligns with your nature, one that requires you to grow, because your goals don't just define your actions, they define your perception. They create the lens through which you interpret the world. Marcus Aurelius said, "A man's life is what his thoughts make of it, and your thoughts are shaped by what you aim at. If you aim for wisdom, you'll see setbacks as teachers. If you aim for comfort, you'll see them as enemies. Choose wisely. And yes, some people say, focus on the journey. They're right, but only once they've reached the summit. You'll hear someone say, it's all about the process, only after they've achieved what they once thought impossible. It's only from that higher ground that the path behind you begins to make sense. While you're still in the climb, it will hurt. It's meant to. That pain forces you to pay attention. It sharpens your senses. It pushes you to grow. You're not supposed to enjoy every part of the journey. You're supposed to endure it with purpose. And when you arrive, you will look back and finally understand what it meant. Without cold, there is no warmth. Without sorrow, there is no joy. Every real destination reveals the journey was worth it. Now, let's go deeper. When we talk about goals here, we're not referring to shallow self-help slogans about productivity or motivation. We're talking about purpose. In Stoic terms, this is called telos, the end toward which all things move. You are part of nature. You were made to move toward something, and when you lose that, you lose your place in the order of the world. You become aimless, not because the world lacks meaning, but because you stopped reaching for something worthy of your effort. Spirituality, in its true form, is not about floating in detachment. It's about alignment with something larger than your own comfort. When your goals align with truth, with growth, with reality, then even your pain becomes sacred. Life won't allow you to stay asleep forever. It will break your illusions. It will force you to correct. The pain you feel isn't punishment, it's instruction. So when you set your goals, choose them as if they were sacred. Not because someone told you to, not because of trends or fear, but because they speak to something deep in you that refuses to be ignored. That's how you find meaning. That's how you walk with strength, not noise. The Stoics understood that a meaningful life is one of service to reason, to purpose, and to the greater good. And if you've never had a goal that made you feel like that, then now is the time to find one. Because let's be honest, most people are following scripts written for them by society, by school, by people who gave up on their own path. Get a degree, get a job, tolerate life, retire quietly. This is not destiny, this is programming. And the wise person breaks free from it. You must choose. Will you live by design or by default? If your goals are borrowed, your life will be borrowed. You must reject the known path. Choose a harder one. Set a higher aim. Embrace the unknown. That's where real intelligence is forged, in the space between failure and persistence, between misstep and correction. And if you're still with me right now, type alignment in the comments so I know who's serious about this journey. And if this speaks to something in you, subscribe, not just to the channel, but to the challenge of becoming someone your past self would be proud of, because we're not done yet. In the next part, we'll look at the biggest barrier most people never overcome, the internal noise that keeps them from ever hearing their own reason. Let's keep going. 4. Your mind sees what your goal commands. Let's talk about the way your mind interprets reality, because the way you see determines the way you choose, and your choices, as Epictetus reminds us, become the architecture of your life. Every thought, every decision, every judgment you make is filtered through a lens, and that lens is shaped by your deepest aims. So if your past choices built the life you're currently standing in, your future will be determined by how you choose to see, interpret, and respond starting now. A man once said that the ideal state of inner life comes when your attention is directed toward something real and meaningful, and when your abilities rise to meet the challenges of that pursuit. In Stoic language, we'd say that harmony comes when your effort aligns with nature and your purpose. That kind of focus silences distraction. It brings order to your inner world. And order, the Stoics knew, is the foundation of virtue and clarity. So let's look at the mind not as a blank slate, but as a living system, a structure of habits, values, and perspectives. It has one essential task: to move you toward what you truly value. If that value is clear, your mind becomes sharp and disciplined. But if your values are shallow, reactive, or borrowed from the crowd, your thoughts scatter and your energy leaks into confusion. This is why Marcus Aurelius said, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." Whatever you focus on long enough, you become. The Stoics would not have spoken of dopamine or feedback loops, but they understood this truth. We move toward what we repeatedly attend to. If your mind is full of defeat, complaint, or bitterness, it will seek evidence to confirm that view. If you believe life is rigged against you, you'll unconsciously act in ways that reinforce that story. You'll ignore opportunity, reject new paths, and settle into a quiet resentment that corrodes the soul. Now let's apply this to a real example. Imagine someone who constantly sees themselves as a failure. No matter what they try, writing, creating, building something, they always sabotage themselves. Not because they lack talent, but because their core belief is that they were never meant to succeed. That belief colors their attention. It blinds them to solutions. They might hear great advice, see a chance to grow, or be handed an opportunity, but they don't reach for it. Not because it's not there, but because they don't believe it's for them. That is not fate. That is a misdirected will. At the center of this problem is what the Stoics would call false judgment. Not external events, but the mistaken interpretation of those events. The enemy isn't failure. The enemy is the identity that quietly wants to fail. The man who fails and learns becomes wise, but the man who fails and blames the world never escapes his condition. Your mind is always working in service of something. So if you've accepted goals you never truly chose, status, comfort, approval, then every conversation, every thought, every decision will be bent around those values. You might sit across from someone, and instead of hearing what they're saying, your mind will evaluate how much they earn, where they went to school, what they drive. You may not even notice it, but you're being steered, not by choice, but by old goals installed by others. This is why you can be in the same situation as someone else, but experience it entirely differently. One man hears a challenge and sees growth. Another hears the same words and feels attacked. The only difference is the framework. As Epictetus said, it's not things themselves that disturb us, but our judgments about them. Let's bring this into something even more specific. Suppose your true goal is to quit your job and build something of your own. That intention will rewire your attention. You'll start noticing things you once ignored. Books, ideas, strategies, even the conversations you have with strangers will offer insight. A casual comment might trigger a breakthrough. Your energy will naturally shift toward the kind of action that supports that goal. That's not coincidence. That's how purpose sharpens perception. But without that clarity, you remain blind. Your mind won't register information that doesn't serve your current aim. Just like a hunter only notices what moves in the forest, your mind will only register what it believes matters. So, if your goal is security and nothing more, you'll ignore every door that leads to freedom. If your goal is comfort, you'll walk right past challenge, never realizing it was the path to growth. And the harsh truth is this: many of your goals were not yours to begin with. They were handed to you. School, job, approval, retirement. These aren't wrong in themselves. But if you never examine them, they become chains. They shape how you think, what you notice, and what you avoid. The Stoics taught us that a life unexamined is a life enslaved. You may be breathing, but your mind is repeating the same patterns, walking the same paths, asking the same shallow questions. Success, then, isn't simply about working harder. It's about seeing differently. It's about choosing new goals and allowing those goals to transform your identity. Because when your identity changes, everything else follows. Your habits, your reactions, your decisions. That's how you reclaim your mind, not through force, but through redirection. Let me give you an example from my own life. There was a period where I'd go out, have a few drinks, enjoy the weekend. Nothing excessive. But I noticed something strange. The next morning my mind was dull, my focus slipped, my thoughts slowed. Not dramatically, but enough to matter. I was writing at the time, trying to bring something meaningful into the world. And I'd sit there staring at the screen, wondering why nothing came. I realized the drinking wasn't the issue. The issue was that it pulled me away from what I said I valued. In other words, the problem didn't feel like a problem until I had a goal strong enough to make it one. Without that goal, I never would have questioned the habit, never would have noticed the cost. So I changed. Not because someone told me to, but because I saw clearly. My suffering had meaning. It revealed the misalignment. And once I adjusted, everything improved. So understand this: you cannot solve a problem until you've chosen a goal worth suffering for. Until you do, your mind will keep filtering life through the same outdated lens. Your discomfort will feel like bad luck, when in truth, it is simply misdirection. To rise above the patterns society has installed in you, you must choose goals that aren't handed to you. You must study, observe, and live in a way that questions the default. As Seneca warned, if you do not know which port you are sailing to, no wind is favorable. Choose your destination, then watch how your mind transforms to meet it. And from here, we continue, because the next layer is even deeper. It's not just the goals you set, but the level of self you're setting them from. Let's move into the stages of identity and what it truly means to grow into a wiser, freer human being. 5. Climb the mountain of mind. To reach the upper tier of intelligence is not about mastering logic or collecting information. It is about evolving the structure of your mind, not just expanding your knowledge horizontally, but deepening your capacity for truth, seeing through false appearances, and becoming someone capable of handling complexity without collapsing into confusion. Today, we explore how that journey unfolds. Let's begin with something simple yet profound. You cannot solve a problem from the same mindset that created it. This echoes a core Stoic idea. When confronted with suffering or error, don't merely react. Step back. Adopt a broader vantage point. In the same way that a sailor climbs the mast to see beyond the storm, wisdom demands that we rise above our immediate perceptions. Your current worldview determines your goals, and your goals shape your attention, your habits, your reactions, and your sense of meaning. But what if your worldview itself is too small? As you climb in development, your goals shift. What seemed important at one level no longer holds the same weight at another. This is not inconsistency. This is evolution. The Stoics did not stay loyal to shallow aims. They aimed for virtue, and from that vantage point, everything else was either in alignment or irrelevant. This process of refining one's vision, shedding old identities, and moving toward higher purposes, that is the heart of intelligence. Now, imagine the mind as a vessel. At first, it is small. We fill it with beliefs, habits, and ways of seeing the world. This is horizontal growth, accumulating skill and understanding. But at some point, the cup must expand. Otherwise, it overflows with chaos and contradiction. That expansion is vertical development. It is the moment when your perspective itself widens, and you begin to see not just the contents of thought, but the architecture of thought itself. There are 3 broad movements: expanding your knowledge at a single level, rising to a new level entirely, or falling back under stress or hardship. And it happens to all of us. Even the most developed minds can regress temporarily when overwhelmed. But the higher your true position, the more grounded your regression. You might fall, but you won't fall far. Let's now examine the stages of this climb, not as fixed identities, but as vantage points the soul must pass through. First are the pre-rational stages. This is childhood, or for some, a permanent state of self-centered survival. Me first, me only. The mind in this phase sees others only as tools or threats. But as we mature, we realize we are not the center of the universe. Others exist. Others matter. And so begins the long path through what we call the conventional stages. Roughly 75% of people never move beyond this terrain. At the conformist level, people obey systems without question. They see authority as truth. A teenager who craves group approval. A religious follower who quotes dogma but has never examined it. These minds are not unintelligent, but they are limited. They see with borrowed eyes. Seneca warned us, "The crowd is the most dangerous advisor." This is why the Stoics always urged solitude, silence, and self-reflection, not to detach from the world, but to see it clearly. From here, the expert stage emerges. This person begins to think independently, but only within narrow frames. Engineers, technicians, scientists who believe all truth is measurable. They are brilliant at solving problems, but blind to whether the problems matter. Their minds are like scalpels, sharp but limited. They believe their framework is the framework. They speak with certainty, but not with understanding. Then comes the achiever. This is the pinnacle of conventional development. The entrepreneur, the high performer, the one who sees systems and leverages them for gain. But often they remain trapped in performance. Their life becomes a project, their value a scoreboard. They seek mastery, but not meaning. This is the world of social media advice, self-improvement loops, hustle culture. There's power in this stage, but it lacks transcendence. And this is where many intelligent minds remain, high-functioning but spiritually restless. Only when the mind starts to question its own structure does the journey shift toward post-conventional growth. The pluralist stage begins to recognize that no single view contains the whole truth. Multiple truths can coexist. A man raised religious becomes atheist, then circles back, not to belief, but to understanding. He sees the symbolic weight of ancient stories. He begins to integrate rather than reject. He understands what the Stoics always taught, that truth is not found in one voice, but in the harmony between many. From here, we reach the strategist, the one who steps outside of the system entirely, who begins to design not just their day, but their worldview. They no longer live to achieve, they live to align. They are less concerned with proving and more with improving. They understand that wisdom is not certainty. It is the capacity to hold tension between opposites, logic and intuition, order and chaos. The strategist embraces paradox. This is where true Stoic insight comes alive. As Marcus Aurelius said, "The art of living is more like wrestling than dancing." The strategist learns to grapple with life, to meet it on its terms, and beyond that comes the construct-aware stage. Here, the mind not only sees through systems, it sees through itself. It recognizes that identity, meaning, and belief are all constructed, and therefore they can be deconstructed, but not to fall into nihilism, rather to rebuild something more real. This mind becomes like a mirror reflecting all perspectives, yet clinging to none. It sees how each person is playing a different game, unaware that they are standing inside a room with many doors. The construct-aware individual walks freely between them. The final stage, the rarest, the most difficult, is the unitive stage. Here, separation dissolves. The self becomes one with the whole, not as a vague spiritual idea, but as a lived experience. Alan Watts touched this place. So did Epictetus, who said, "You are a fragment torn from God." At this level, the mind no longer seeks to dominate life. It seeks to serve it. Intelligence becomes silence. Power becomes humility. Purpose becomes presence. From this stage, all others are seen with compassion, not contempt. The unitive mind understands that everyone is climbing, and each is doing the best they can from the view they currently hold. Their vision no longer filters the world through distortion. It becomes like a mirror that no longer warps what it reflects, a still surface that shows the world as it is, not as fear or pride once shaped it. To climb these stages is not a race, it is a return to what is most real, most permanent, most divine. Pain is not an obstacle here, it is the signal that growth is near. Every time you are shaken, it is a test. Not to break you, but to strip away what cannot go with you to the next level. So reflect on this. What stage are you living from? Not just in your words, but in your reactions, your goals, your worldview. If you want to live as a wise person, if you want to rise beyond the noise of imitation and into the silence of truth, then you must keep climbing. And as you keep climbing, you'll approach a place few ever reach, a stage where the mind stops dividing the world into categories. Words, thoughts, and sensations are no longer mistaken for reality itself. They are seen as tools, not truths. The person who reaches this point doesn't cling to labels. They act when needed, speak when useful, and rest when silence says more. Here, dualities like success and failure, life and death, are no longer battles. They're seen as part of the same unfolding. The wise stop trying to force meaning. Instead, they begin to reflect it, like a mirror that no longer warps the image, but shows the world as it is. And no, they haven't destroyed their ego. They've learned how to use it without being used by it. Like a skilled actor who wears the mask only when the role calls for it, they move freely, no longer defined by appearances. The Stoics called this living in harmony with nature. It's not passivity, it's presence, a quiet force that no longer needs noise to feel real. So if your aim is to become more intelligent than most, know this: the journey is not about collecting knowledge, it's about becoming someone worthy of truth. The path is steep, the climb is long, but if you keep walking with clarity and discipline, you will see further than you ever imagined. Keep climbing. True intelligence isn't loud. It doesn't need to prove itself. It expands through reflection, clarity, and the willingness to see life as it truly is, not just as we wish it to be. The more you zoom out and observe without judgment, the more patterns you begin to see, and with them, the wisdom to move through life with purpose. If this video helped shift something in your perspective, consider subscribing so we can keep growing together. This is a journey of depth, not speed. Leave a comment below with just 2 words: stay sharp. Because each time you choose truth over noise, silence over ego, and learning over pride, you separate yourself from the 99%. You're building something rare, a mind that doesn't just think, but understands. And in the next video, we'll go even deeper into that kind of power.